Hello, this is Buckshot or Four Corners here, and I'm taking a look at the new map that came out in For Honor. I've already taken a look at it, but I want to specifically look at whether or not it is a good, realistic, historical castle that could be used for defense. Now, before I get into anything and any critiques I have, and I do have some critiques, I will say that I am quite well informed, or at least more than most people are, in castle defenses and how they function. And I will also say that this is by far my favorite map that Ubisoft has ever given us in in For Honor. Like, good god, this map is gonna be fun to play on. It's got 3 levels of verticality and 3 lanes to go on top of it. Like, it's got a sewer underneath the ground level and a floor above it, and they all have interconnecting ladders that go from one to the other. It's just pure genius, and it's got 3 different player-controlled hazard elements that are just wonderful. But what I will say first is that this is not, contrary to what the name Secluded Keep would lead you to believe, this is not a castle, nor is it a keep. It is a fortress. And the reason is because keeps refer to the inside building of a castle, assuming the castle is more than one building. And some people will tell you that a castle needs a wall. That is not true. You could have according to historical definitions, you could have a building that was without walls that was a castle. But what do I mean by it's not a castle? Well, the historical definition of castle, as it would have been used in the time that For Honor takes place, is a lord's home that has been fortified with military-level defenses. That is what a castle is. But I see no evidence anywhere looking around this entire castle that a lord would live here, and so this is a military-only base, which makes it not a castle or a keep, but a fort. And after looking around the whole castle, because I have checked out the map, I have to tell you, this thing is as good of a map as this is gameplay-wise, it is a horrible castle. Like, it's absolutely atrocious. Now, I will say, as for its good parts, it is in a perfect location for a castle. You could not get any better than this. It's completely surrounded by water, and it has a stone bridge that leads from land all the way to the castle, and it is the only way to approach it except by ship. And you can't put siege ladders on ships, at least not ones that are that tall. So, top tier points for selecting a location to create your castle. It's wonderful. Now, a lot of people might think that this is a rather small looking fort or castle, as they call it. No, this is really large. And in fact, if that building over there was complete and was intended for living in, this would be like big enough for a king to live in. It's a really nice castle. At least for where it can be placed, this is gigantic. And so now the first thing I'm going to notice is that for their drawbridge, they have the counterweight drawbridge, which is good. You can tell by the way the beams are laid out that this is this is to be pulled up by a counterweight rather than by a winch, for example. And basically, this means is that you would attach a gigantic weight on hooks, and then the beams that that are above the bridge would move up, and so would the bridge by extension. Now, this is great that they actually looked up different ways that medieval castles were created, except for one small problem, and that's that those chains that are attached to that drawbridge don't go anywhere. There is no place that they connect anywhere in here, and this would be the room for it, based by the geographic, just by looking at it, this would be where the chains come in. Now, there is this chain here, but that doesn't do anything. It's literally just a chain loop attached to a wall. It has no purpose. And for a second I thought, oh, maybe that's what this is right here, but no. This is an interactable that closes that gate. And at first I thought, oh, that's a neat mechanic. But then I started to realize, why in the world would you put the mechanism that opens and closes your inner gates outside the inner gate? There is no feasible reason that that would be there. I mean, if the enemy takes this keep, and there is a plain staircase that allows them to walk right up to the gatehouse over here, they can just pull the lever and open that gate. It makes no sense. That lever should be on the other side. And I thought, well, maybe it was there for game purposes, you know, because it would make more sense. But then I realized that the map would not be any worse or any better if you had that lever over here, because you can still see the gates. As you can see, it's a bit tougher, granted, but you can still see the gate just fine. Now, the next thing I was looking around for was the popular castle equipment and different parts that it would have. It has a gatehouse. That's a wonderful start. Gatehouses are wonderful. And even better, the gatehouse has 2 gates, which is incredible. Not a lot of games have this. And a double-gated gatehouse is amazing, because it means that once they break down the first gate, they have to enter the gatehouse and break down the second gate. And the idea is that through murder holes, you would rain death on them while they're trying to break down the second gate. And then we come into the problem. These 2 gates are way too close together. This gate right here should be over here. That's where the portcullis should be, and this one should be over at the edge. And what that would achieve is more room in the center of the gatehouse for murder holes. And not to mention, the next problem I see at this gatehouse, there are no murder holes. And we know for a fact that this place is hollow, and that soldiers can get in and out between this and the gatehouse lift room upstairs, because there's a door right here. So naturally, it would be of a reasonable assumption that there would be that the room extends all the way around, and they have murder holes here. They even have a room right here, so why didn't they put murder holes on here? So, after looking at that, I thought, well, let's take a look around. And as I mentioned that they have an inner gate here. This is very well designed. You want an inner gate. You want your place to be subdivided, because it means more layers of protection, because castles were always designed with the idea in mind of if this fails, what comes next. And which is great. They subdivided it, and they included an extra gate. And then as I explored the castle, I realized that doesn't do anything, because you can literally walk around it. I mean, look at this right here. When I look around here, there is absolutely no semblance of even the idea of having a door or something to close up in the case of a siege. And look, there's right there here as well. The only thing that's protecting the only thing that's protecting 2 of these 3 points, because there's one over there, is the boiling oil that's above it. But that is not an effective means of closing your place, because commanders will just send their soldiers right in, because they take the fortress if they do that. Now, I continue looking around, and I do admit that there is graves here inside, which could indicate that it would be, a castle, but the graves do not a castle make. Living quarters a castle make, and usually gravestones are a sign that living quarters might be near. But I don't see anything of the sorts that a lord lived here. This, if anything, looks like a tomb of lords to me that was meant to be defended, and obviously failed for good reason. Like, it's awfully designed. As you can see, I did not pass one doorway or gate on the way in here. And look, I'm behind the second gate. You can literally... oh, okay, thank God that there is at least a door here, even if it's been busted down. By the way, I'm rating this as a castle for what it would have looked like if it wasn't in such a state of disarray. Like, it's not fair to call a castle bad design when it's broken. So I'm basing it off what it would have looked like if it was in perfect order and condition, and I see no evidence that there was ever a door in those open gaps. Now, one of the things they did get right, and I will admit that, is there is a Great Hall in here. Yeah, and the Great Hall is down here, and it's much too big to be a chapel. Chapels were really tiny rooms in medieval castles and keeps. However, as I said, this is a fortress, not a... as I said, this is a fortress and not a castle, so there is no reason for a Great Hall to exist here, or a chapel for that matter, because the Great Halls were intended to impress the people that the Lord invited to their home. And since no Lord lives here, as we discussed, there's no reason for this room to be here at all. So now we'll take a look at the we'll go on top of the ramparts, which is the part of the wall that you walk on, and take a look at the battlements. And the first thing that I noticed when I came up here is that they got crenellations right. Crenellations are the jagged up and down tooth-like parts on top of the wall. They got them right, which is wonderful. What do I mean by that? Well, these things are supposed to be the height of a human. Now, I get that these things are supposed to be, like, taller than you. Now, I get that my character, you might say, well, my character is, you know, taller than these things right now. But you have to keep in mind, a Highlander is tall among the heroes, and then on top of that, the primary people who would be standing on these and shooting through the little crevices in between, by the way, that's what they're for, is that you can shoot between them, are the generic archers, which are like half the height of my character. Like, they would come up to, like, maybe his pecs. My character has pecs. Probably, we don't know. He might be fat. But the idea is that you would hide behind the gigantic part here from enemy fire, and then you would shoot through these little openings, these little slits. And that's what crenellations are. And so then I started to look around, and I was looking for something very in particular called hoardings. Now, hoardings are wood structures that you attach to walls around the outside, and the idea is that they provide a platform for your archers to stand on and fire straight down. And I did, in fact, find them. They are right here on this tower, and right here, and up there on top of that tower, which is wonderful. Hoardings actually existed, and what's more, if you look up, you can see the gap, you can see the space that the archers were supposed to stand on, and the gap between where they're supposed to stand on and the wall, where they would shoot down and throw rocks down, which is a wonderful attention to detail, and it shows that these people kinda, sorta, maybe knew what they were doing. And what I will also compliment them on is putting crenellations on the inside of the castle walls as well, because in reality, when defenders broke in, when offenders broke in and broke through the gates, the defenders would be on these walls raining death down over them, and they would need crenellations on the inside too for when that happened. But where I will stop the compliments is the fact that this staircase is not only sturdy and obvious, but unprotected at all. There is nothing that would stop the invaders from walking up these stairs and demolishing the defenders. So then we move on to something that I noticed right away. It was one of the first things I noticed, and it made me facepalm. And that's the reticulations. So, do you see how the wall... The top of the wall juts out a bit, and it has like those half circles that line the walls. Where it has those half circles that line the walls. I'll zoom in on them so that, when I'm editing the video, so that you know exactly what I'm talking about. But those are called reticulations, and a lot of people think these are for specifically aesthetic purposes, but they are not. They served a military function, and they served an important military function, and that is that a defender could stand on top of the wall and shoot down through a gap in the reticulations at the invaders that were pressed up against the wall. It's basically a hoarding, except more refined because it was built into the wall from the beginning rather than built after it. But there, as you can see, there are no gaps, and which means that these reticulations were specifically for aesthetic purposes, which just didn't. That concept did not exist in the medieval era. Everything had a purpose. And then we go to the last little part that I would want to note about this castle, and that because these walls are broken here, we can see exactly how thick they are on this tower here, and I gotta tell ya, they're not thick enough. These walls that I'm standing on are perfectly fine, but these towers, they're like a half a meter thick in terms of stone width, and that is not enough at all. You want them to be at least 2 meters thick. Otherwise, they're just going to crumble against trebuchets. By the way, trebuchets were a lot less effective than people think they were, but the reason they were a lot less effective is because the walls were 2 meter thick. If they were half a meter thick, yeah, this is the kind of damage a trebuchet shot can do. So, I will say that it is neat that they have, you know, anti-siege equipment and battlement and additional battlements like this on here. It would just make more sense if they put them so that they fell on the gate, on the road leading up to the gate, because that is where soldiers are more likely to be. Not to mention there is no, and since they obviously have no way to lift their drawbridge, yeah, you see the issue here. It's going to be really easy to take this castle as long as you can get... even if you just get here, if you just stand right here, there is no way any defender can hit you. So, you know, in conclusion, while it is my favorite designed map in this game, it is an atrocious fortress. Like, this thing would not defend anybody. The only advantages it has are its location, and that is it. It also has good crenellations, but it's overall just a bad castle. Or, not castle, fortress. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. Most of my information and jazz over the subjects and castles in general come from a channel named SHAREfactory, who does a lot of this type of thing, and it is where most of my information regarding how castles were constructed and defended comes from. Give him a watch. SHAREfactory is a wonderful channel. Super interesting. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video, and goodbye.